Now, is he as polished politically as me? Nope.
You guys are banning my friends from coming on my show.
Roll up on me wrong, I'ma let you know that was the wrong way to roll up on me.
I believe Norby Williamson is the guy who is attempting to sabotage.
So we have a pretty interesting update in regards to Pat McAfee and ESPN, and a storyline that has been very captivating to follow over the past year, as Pat McAfee and Stephen A. Smith got into an explosive verbal altercation a few weeks ago, reportedly. Now, before we get to the content, I want to say that I look up to both Stephen A. Smith and Pat McAfee. I mean, Pat McAfee's jersey is on my wall for a reason. It's not my intention to come off as slanderous or anything, more to report on a rumor that I heard online that a lot of us are talking about. So make sure you drop a like, subscribe, and turn on our notifications to help the channel grow. Now that we get all that out of the way, break! Look right over here, you'll see all of these wonderful human beings that have been able to make some money by playing Prize Picks. And I give away my picks for free each and every day on my Instagram at The Flight Mike and Snapchat at Flight Mike Snap. And right now they're hooking up my subscribers fat when you use my promo code Flight Mike when you sign up for Prize Picks. And thank you, Prize Picks, for the sponsor. Mic check 1 2 1 2. What's going on, everybody? When Pat McAfee initially decided to leave FanDuel TV, where he was under contract for 4 years and $120 million to go to ESPN, a lot of people were wondering whether or not this would be the right fit. As a fan of the Pat McAfee show, a huge reason why I enjoyed the show to begin with is because Pat was his fully unfiltered self. It was a breath of fresh air, and it's not what you would typically see from the individuals yelling at each other on First Take or on Undisputed. Pat had full creative control of the direction of his product, and that's why his fans loved him so much. At the same time, it was a great opportunity for Pat McAfee to expose himself to a legitimate national audience, which he was already doing a great job at doing, but going to ESPN was a different animal. He was going to be on national television, doing the show that he loved, and he had the backing of ESPN producers. The flip side, at least what Pat McAfee stated, was he would have to cut down on the profanity. And for the most part, I didn't really see an issue with the Pat McAfee show and ESPN, nothing too big. I mean, yeah, you saw less of Ian Rappaport and a little bit more of Adam Schefter whenever they reported on NFL Inside News, and every single time Aaron Rodgers appeared on the show, ESPN executives were sweating a little bit, but you didn't really see anything substantial happen until Jimmy Kimmel and Aaron Rodgers got into a fight. Now, the inception of this fight was from the Pat McAfee show, where Aaron Rodgers made an appearance on the Pat McAfee show, was his usual unfiltered self, and then commented on Jimmy Kimmel's potential involvement on the Epstein flight logs. Jimmy Kimmel obviously took offense to this, and not only did he post a 5-paragraph essay claiming that he was innocent on his Twitter page, but he started roasting Aaron Rodgers' education.
A guy who went to community college, then got into Cal on a football scholarship and didn't graduate, someone who never spent a minute studying the human body, is an expert in the field of immunology. He just put on a magic helmet, and that G made him a genius. Aaron got 2 A's on his report card. They were both in the word Aaron, okay?
Now, this put Pat McAfee in a very difficult position. A huge reason why this show was able to explode in popularity was because of Aaron Rodgers' involvement in the show. An individual that is regularly misunderstood by traditional media finally had an outlet to reach his fans and more. And in order to get this type of information, you had to watch the Pat McAfee show. You had to see the Pat McAfee show watermark on the upper portion of your screen. You would be exposed to Pat McAfee himself and his personality, which has routinely brought in brand new subscribers for the show. And this put both Pat McAfee and ESPN in a difficult position. You can't tell Pat McAfee that Aaron Rodgers can't be on your show anymore, which apparently there was a day where we thought that Aaron Rodgers wasn't going to be on the Pat McAfee show anymore, before showing up on the Pat McAfee show a few days later. There was a lack of consistency here, and a huge reason why was apparently as a result of the liability Rodgers has incurred by linking Kimmel to Epstein. Rodgers' remarks could prompt Disney to tell ESPN to ban Rodgers from McAfee's show. Now, McAfee McAfee's reaction to this was quite brilliant. He understood his involvement in platforming this beef and even empathized with the way that Jimmy Kimmel felt.
See, don't like the fact that we're associated with anything negative ever. That is Aaron and Jimmy. They've been
jousting a bit.
There's accusations made about people that can lead to lawsuits. Why Jimmy Kimmel felt the way he felt, especially with his position. But I think Aaron was just trying to talk shit now.
But he wouldn't be finished there. A few days later, Pat McAfee declared war on the ESPN executive that he felt was trying to sabotage him, an individual by the name of Norby Williamson.
Now, there are some people actively trying to sabotage us from within ESPN.
Funny.
More, I believe Norby Williamson is the guy who is attempting to sabotage. 100% sure that is just seemingly the only human that has information. Information gets leaked and it's wrong.
Now this is where things get really fascinating, because you don't typically see these types of things come to light, especially when you're working for ESPN. But since Pat McAfee is notorious for being very open with his fans, I guess we got a bit of an inside look at this. But that wouldn't be the only ESPN executive that would get called out. Aaron Rodgers would appear on the show 6 days later, and he would call out another ESPN senior vice president of production, Mike Foss, this time blaming him for the fact that there was beef with Jimmy Kimmel to begin with.
I think Mike Foss watched the clip. I feel like I made a statement.
Foss right now is sitting on an airplane watching this just, oh my God.
Now, right when this beef could really hit its apex, Pat took a little bit of a break as a result of the NFL season concluding, but he would go on the All the Smoke podcast to break down his war with the ESPN suits. And this is what he had to say about it.
Like, I thought that was a warning shot to that guy. You know, I didn't even think that was
a direct hit.
Yeah, because I'm the executive producer of my show. I report directly to Jimmy and Bob. So I'm not really viewing anybody as, like, I saw everybody like, Pat calls out his boss. I don't got a motherfucking boss. Which is hilarious because he's the former president of the place. I guess a lot of people had a lot of fear of him. I did not. Like, right. I do not have, that guy left me sitting in his office for 45 minutes, no-showed me when I was supposed to have a meeting with him, right? When 5 years ago, 6 years ago, whatever.
No-showed you.
No-showed, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, so
And you remember that?
What's that?
And you remember that?
This thing's a fucking elephant brain, buddy. He also banned all my friends from coming on my show. So there was a ban of ESPN talent on my show on YouTube that came directly from him, which so much so that I started a hashtag ESPN stinks the day that everybody got banned from my show. It only trended for like 8-9 hours or something like that. And then that's the next day is when I met Jimmy Pitaro. Jimmy Pitaro called me and said, like, hey, how do we, what's the deal? And I told him about, you guys are banning my friends from coming on my show. Matt Hasselbeck, who worked at ESPN, Jeff Passan worked at ESPN, Dan Orlovsky worked at ESPN. All these people that I've known since before they got into ESPN, like, they're not even allowed to come on my podcast or whatever, or my YouTube show. You guys banned it. So, like, that guy was not a fan of me. I'm a fan of SportsCenter. We all watch SportsCenter. I grew up on
All did.
but there became like a war almost from behind the scenes from like SportsCenter people and like people that have been at ESPN a long time against us coming in and taking their jobs and all this other shit. And I didn't see it like that. We were like pumped that we made it to the big leagues. Like, hey, I'm pumped that we're on the worldwide league. Like, that's how I viewed it.
Come on, man.
And this is what I'm talking about, playing the checkers player. Like, get the ESPN deal done. I'm like, this is awesome. Like, we joined the ESPN team. So lucky to be here. We get access. And then immediately it's like, this guy sucks. This guy's ruining ESPN. And it's not coming from people outside ESPN. It was coming from people within ESPN. And I did not expect that at all.
I want to say that it's really unprecedented to see Pat go through this. The only thing I could really think of that even compares to this is what the FaZe Clan went through, or whenever an artist gets signed by a big record label. Their product gets watered down. They don't have as much control as they once did, but there are so many benefits to being with a big corporation like ESPN, and it seems like Pat is struggling with those consequences. On one hand, you are working for Disney, a company that needs to be politically correct and appeal to the masses as much as possible. A company that can't have Aaron Rodgers coming on and throwing out whatever theory that comes to his head. Whether you agree with it or not, it's not good for business for Disney to experience that. On the other hand, it's this type of content that got Pat his audience to begin with. It's this type of content that his audience enjoys. And it's this type of content that'll keep the viewers coming back. So for a core fan of the Pat McAfee show like myself, I enjoy when Aaron Rodgers comes out and shows his toe and throws out whatever theory he's thinking of or whatever darkness retreat he wants to do or talks about his ayahuasca trips. But if you're some guy flipping through the channels and you just have ESPN playing on the background, you see the Pat McAfee show come on, and next thing you know, Aaron Rodgers is saying,
"I can't wait to see Jimmy Kimmel on those Epstein lists."
If you don't agree with his views, it may rub you the wrong way. So at this point, you know where Pat McAfee stands with ESPN, and I hope that I gave you a little bit of an insight towards his struggle, because I could really empathize with that struggle. But the man that was the face of ESPN for the past decade is none other than Stephen A. Smith. Whether you love him or hate him, you have to admit that Stephen A. Smith is a legend in his career. He is the main reason why First Take is the #1 sports debate show in the United States. He's consistently making the right moves and is a legend in this industry. But he is prone to giving polarizing takes, whether that has to do with sports.
It's a more unstoppable offensive player. It's a 5-on-5 game. LeBron James or Kevin Durant?
Kevin Durant.
Incorrect.
Kevin Durant.
LeBron James
Kevin Durant.
is a
What are you watching?
far more unstoppable
What are you watching?
offensive
Far
player.
far more unstoppable. That's
Far
a joke.
more.
That's a joke.
Offensive player.
Excuse me, I didn't.
Or bringing up something political. At the same time, he's still trying to grow his podcast. And whenever you're trying to grow your podcast and there's more exposure to you talking for a longer period of time about whatever you like, you're more prone to saying things that may be a little controversial, but you can leverage that controversy into more viewership. A few weeks ago, Stephen A. Smith went on the Bussin' with the Boys podcast and discussed Pat McAfee's views on politics and how he doesn't need to be as polished because he's white.
I love Pat McAfee.
He's a man.
Love him to death. He's an honest brother. He don't he'll let you know exactly where he stands. That's my kind of dude. Now, is he as polished politically as me? Nope. Because he has no desire to be. Number one. And number two, if we're being honest, he's white and I'm black. He didn't have to be.
Now, bear in mind, Stephen A. Smith said he loves Pat McAfee. He has a lot of respect for Pat McAfee, but these are just his views.
He's white and I'm black. Did you expect me to apologize for that? I want to talk about Pat McAfee. He was the example because they were asking me about Pat McAfee being at ESPN. Let me be very, very clear about where I stand. That's not about Pat McAfee. That's about anybody white. The rules are different for us. The rules are different for black people. Any white person that wants to deny that, be my guest. There is history spanning decades that proves such a thing. I was not talking about Pat McAfee. I was not talking about his show. I support him and his show. The more successful they are, the more successful I become. I've said it before and I've said it again. I'll say it again many, many times over. Hell, whether he believes it or not, I don't even know. We've never really talked about it. I can tell you this for a fact. One of the greatest things that ever happened to somebody in my position is Pat McAfee and his show coming to ESPN and them getting paid because you set the market.
Which, by the way, I agree with, and I think that's a beautiful way to look at sports media, especially a person in my position. If I see Pat McAfee's viewership taking off, which I view him in a completely different stratosphere from myself, maybe one day I'll make it there, but I still view him as that way. Or if I see someone like Brett Coleman or That's Good Sports crushing it, I think of it as that's good for me. Primarily because I feel like if there's interest in football content, then that usually bleeds over to other channels. And in the case of Stephen A. Smith, I do agree that Pat McAfee was very good for him, especially if you're trying to go into podcasting. This man quite literally set the blueprint up for you. So according to Ryan Glass-Steagall of the New York Post, McAfee and Smith were recently involved in an explosive argument, with the former All-Pro punter calling the First Take host a motherfucker. Per Glass-Steagall, the dispute stemmed from creative differences regarding a yet-to-be-announced project of Smith's, which will be produced by his production company and air on ESPN. It's not exactly clear from the Post what element of the project McAfee and Smith didn't agree on, why McAfee would be involved in Smith's production in the first place, or why things escalated so severely. The argument occurred several weeks ago, with the Post initially hearing that Smith had banned McAfee from future appearances on First Take. Reached by the Post, both McAfee and Smith deny that such a ban is in place and downplayed any bad blood between each other. Now, I want to say that I could believe that there's no bad blood between the two, and it wouldn't shock me if the media just got a snippet of Pat McAfee saying, "Ah, you motherfucker." maybe even in a joking camaraderie type of way. But at the same time, even if these two were beefing, I don't think they would admit it outright that they were beefing. I mean, McAfee said, "I have nothing but love for Stephen A. I think I'm still welcome on First Take. I was scheduled through football season to join on Tuesdays. Hopefully next year that'll happen as well." Stephen A. Smith also said that Pat McAfee and I have no issue, and the notion that he'd be banned from First Take is BS. We are number one, and he has absolutely contributed to us remaining number one. McAfee was asked to come on each Tuesday through the Super Bowl, and he did just that, kicking ass each time he came on air. Smith added, "If McAfee wants to be on First Take next season, he'll be on First Take. I love winners, and McAfee has proven he wins, which helps me win. I don't know how many times I have to tell folks that he's trailblazed the path into a new era for so many of us. I'm grateful to have him as part of my team and the ESPN family, and I'm looking forward to having him on for years to come. I sincerely hope that I will not have to repeat myself on this nonsense again." On one hand, I'll go to Stephen A's defense. He does have to repeat himself again by saying, "Hey, I want you to know that if this man's successful, I am successful."
I support him and his show. The more successful they are, the more successful I become. I've said it before, and I've said it again. I'll say it again many, many times over.
At the same time, I don't think Stephen A. Smith is always real with us. I mean, do you remember what he said about Max Kellerman's firing and the reason why he didn't work out with Max Kellerman? Now, I think this part's a reach. Some people are even saying that this clip could be a reference to Pat McAfee, but I don't really see how.
I got a couple of pet peeves. I can't stand a drunk ass person coming to me. I don't like it. I don't like it. I think that it's incredibly challenging and self-deprecating for you to compromise your alertness. I don't like drugs. I don't like alcohol. I'm not trying to fight anybody. I don't want conflict, but I ain't scared of it. If you roll up on me wrong, I'm gonna let you know that was the wrong way to roll up on me.
At the end of the day, do I think Stephen A. Smith and Pat McAfee are beefing? I'm not really sure, because I think both of these individuals are professional enough to not tell the whole world that ESPN's top talents are beefing. So I'll let that for you to decide. Let me know in the comment section down below. Do you think something's going on between Stephen A. Smith and Pat McAfee? If so, why or why not? Aside from that, I'm your boy Mike, and I'm dropping our mic until our next upload.